a seat. No, I'm good. It's a very bright light out there, isn't it? Hey, it's great to be here in Wellington. Is this going to be one of those "there's nothing like Wellington on a good day" days? Or not so much? Not so much. Okay. Right. Okay. Cool. Hey, I want to just share some thoughts, particularly kind of maybe relevant around the end of the year, around the kind of this thing of I believe God's a God of seasons. Our Let me get this right. Our God, how He works in redemption is also how He works in creation. God doesn't do creation just linearly. God does creation through seasons, and we understand the character of God, how God works through seasons. He's a God of seasons, and I just believe for some people, like I want to say that I believe it's a new season. But one of the challenges in our spirituality is be able to do transitions in seasons, and some of us get stuck in seasons, and we end up camping somewhere that God doesn't mean us to camp. It was for a season. But then He transitions us out of seasons, and we need to get good at changing seasons. And so part of that, there's a reference, the bottom of the land at the end is a reference to the Lazarus. Part of it is when God goes us into a new seasons, particularly out of a winter season, to take off the grave clothes, take off things that are holding you back to a previous season and a difficult season, and to step into something new. So, I hope it's kind of prophetic for some people and even for the church around a new season. And so, can you flick up the next one? We just did did you guys do the fasting recently? Did you do the Spirit-led series or not? We in Auckland. So Pastor Sam, it's interesting. So we did this thing of fasting, and the theme for it was Spirit-led. I thought that's an interesting kind of combination, but it actually comes together from this passage in Luke, where again it says Jesus, full of the Spirit, left the Jordan and was led by the Spirit into the wilderness, where for 40 days He's tempted and He ate nothing. And kind of this thing that somehow it's like we got to get our heads around. I was following God and I ended up in a wilderness place. It's like, yeah, it happens. It happened to Jesus. And it's like, and to be clear, in that, the devil says where he was tempted by the devil had an agenda to take him out in that season. The devil has an agenda, but God was going to use that to set him up for his next season. So it's a conflicting agendas. The devil is like, I really don't like it. I hate him because I know he hates people. He's nasty. He wants to take people out. He wants to destroy hope and vision and belief and confidence. And he had an agenda in those wilderness seasons to take out Jesus. But if you notice, verse 14, Jesus returned to Galilee in the power of the Spirit. Something shifted. The devil had an agenda to take him out in that season. The Spirit allowed it to happen because it was setting him up for his next season. He was building something in. He was putting the roots down deeper. That was a divine setup for the next season. Oh, thank you. That's a big help. But verse 2, 40 days. 40 is the wilderness time in the Old Testament of 40 years. For Jesus, 40 days. But it's a season. And the problem is, some of us, I kind of feel God's anointing come out. Some of us get stuck in there. Now, it's a season, but it has a time. And there's a time when somehow, and I'm going to hopefully persuade you that in faith that the seasons come to an end. And there's something goes wrong if we find ourselves stuck too long in a dark place, in a wilderness season. And all of us, if you've been around, all of us have been through dark seasons, but they come to an end. And God brings in something new. And I want to inspire hope for some of you that it's a new season. And talk about that. Flick up the next one. Many of you would know this book, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. We've done Christmas productions and stuff. It's an interesting book around this whole story of Narnia and Aslan the lion who represents Jesus and the evil witch who kind of represents Satan, all that kind of stuff. But actually the whole story sits within a bigger frame. If you put up the next one, it's about these 4 kids. It's actually set during the Second World War because London was being bombed, that they would send children out to live in country houses with people to protect them from the bombing. So the book is actually about these 4 children who are sent to live in this house with this aging professor. And if you know the story, next one, that they discover there's this wardrobe. And suddenly walking through this wardrobe, next one, they find themselves in this whole new world. That's the world of Narnia with the lion and the evil witch and the winter and battle. And next one, and actually in that world, they become kings and queens. But the interesting thing, next one, is it's one step through a wardrobe takes them into another world. And I think this reflects something of God, that actually God is a God who, I want to say this with confidence, God is a God who we can feel like we live in one world and we're stuck there, but he can just open a door into another world. Happened, Joseph for years, sold in slavery, prisoner, one Pharaoh's dream. The next day he's the prime minister of the known world. God in a moment can take you from the prison to the prime minister. He's a God who shifts things. And this is the kind of the bigger picture of this story, that God is a God who can step you through a wardrobe into a new dimension, into a new season, into a new reality. And so next one, I want to talk about that. There's a psalm that's kind of like that. Psalm 126, when the Lord restored the fortunes of Zion, we were like those who dreamed. It's like I almost got to pinch myself. Am I dreaming? Because for so long it was so hard. It was so difficult. I can barely believe that it's actually working out now. That God has turned things around. And it's like we feel like we were dreaming. And some of the symptoms of that, it's great, the testimony lines up with this, with our mouths were filled with laughter, our tongues with songs of joy. There's the transition. There's where the shift, there's joy back, there's life back, there's a confidence, things are working. For so long, anything I tried, nothing worked. Suddenly I've gone through a door and now stuff works. Stuff is happening, stuff succeeds. And it's like, and then I love this, it says the second half of verse 2, then it was said among the nations, the Lord has done great things for them, the Lord has done great things for us. And sometimes it's almost like other people see it before we see it. And that's why that importance of encouragement, we need to speak that into others. We see this on your life, we see this, and then you're like, oh yeah, actually, because actually we're stuck. Sometimes the season shifts, but still in here and in here, we're living back in a previous season, and we have to catch up. And sometimes there's other people speaking, hey, no, you're not there anymore. That's not the you that we see now. Yeah, that was you for so long, but come on, dare to believe that something's different. Just notice verse 1, when the Lord restored the fortunes of Zion, and then flick up the next one, verse 4. Restore our fortunes, Lord. It's like, I thought he had. But I think what this shows is he found himself back in that another dark place. How God's a God of seasons. You get there and then suddenly like, but the difference this time is I've seen him do it before, and now I have a confidence he can do it again. I have a testimony. God, you restore. I've been in a time when I almost had to pinch myself. Am I dreaming? But now, God, I need you to do it again. But this time I actually know that you can do it. I've seen it. God, you're going to do it again. And so you realize these famous verses in 5 and 6 are actually incredible statements of faith. Those who sow with tears will reap with songs of joy. Where do you sow on? A broken, barren field. But where before I might have seen it as barren and wilderness, now I see it as a field that I'm sowing into and I'm expecting a harvest. Yeah, there's tears, there's sowing, but it's not wasted effort. I'm sowing for a future season. And this confidence, those who go out weeping, carrying seed to sow, will return with songs of joy, carrying sheaves with them. It's like one day I'm going to be holding so much stuff of harvest. I'm confident it's going to happen because I've seen him do it before. He's going to do it again. And it's like we need to, the testimony of God, you've done it before. We had a bit of a staff meeting in Auckland talking about this, and my wife was there, and a person leading it said, hey, our testimony is important. Anyone got some stuff to share? And a long time ago, now we were missionaries in the Philippines, and my wife was there. She shared some of the stories. I was like, I've forgotten about that. Like a time when living in the big city, Manila, there was no water, there was no electricity. We had little kids, Like we ran out of water. Like that's serious when literally no water in a big city. There's no rivers, and it's remember one day just walking out the door with his bucket, like I got to go and find some water. I don't know where, and someone felt sorry for me and gave me some water. But Christine, I was like, oh, I forgot about that. I forgot about the times we literally ran out of food, like and money, and saying thanks with a plate of rice and a couple of fish, and going, God, thank you for this meal. In the next 5 hours, you got to come through, else we got nothing to eat. And he came through, and it's like, oh God, I've forgotten that even the testimonies are, you've done it before, you can do it again. You've restored our fortunes, God. Now I need you to do it again with another area of my life, because I've found myself back in a season where I'm looking for breakthrough, where I'm looking for something to shift. There's a whole mindset around that. So if you look up the next one, I love Psalm 23. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, there's the point. I'm walking through this thing. I got bad, and it's not very encouraging. Hey, you will go to dark valleys. There's a point. I'm going to walk. This is not my destination. That's why I'm saying God's a God of seasons. The greatest danger is we give up in the dark place, as we camp there, as we surrender hope, and we end up, rather than passing through the valley, I'm stuck in the valley. And it's like, I want to learn how to walk through valleys. And even there, this confidence, God, you're with me. I'm not going to, because I've walked through some other valleys and I've seen you bring me through. I've seen you change situations. And so I'm confident, if you go on the next one, it's like, this is my confidence. And the commentators point out Psalm 23, there's no request made of God. It's all statements of confidence. No, you prepare a table for me. If I'm not sitting in front of a table, it's because you're still preparing it, but you are preparing it. This absolute you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Yeah, God, there's enemies all around, but I'm confident you're preparing something better. This is not my destination. If I'm not feeling like I'm sitting in front of a banqueting table, I haven't arrived yet. And I'm going to keep going. Anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Many of you know this. Verse 6, surely, like absolutely confidently, absolutely total confidence, your goodness and love will follow me. And in Hebrew, that word follow is quite an aggressive term. It's used like when soldiers pursued someone, hunted them down, chased. It's like the sense, like some people have the sense like, everything I try, it's going to fail, it's not going to work. This guy's confidence, no, do you know, like there's this force that's always after me. It's called God's goodness and mercy. If I haven't seen it yet, they're on their way. They're relentless. They're coming after me. And this is David's confidence. Yeah, I walk through some spaces, but that's my point. I'm going to walk through them and out the other side. Another psalm like this. Oh, and if you go next one, the whole foundation for this. No, God's my shepherd, and He's leading me. And now, part of that lead, He takes me to some places I didn't think we were going to go there. But He's like, we're going through this place. Don't give up hope in the valley, because we're going through it to another place. Next one, another psalm like this, Psalm 84. Blessed are those whose strength is in you, whose hearts are set on pilgrimage. Verse 6, as they pass, same language, as they pass through the valley of Baca means valley of tears. Got bad news for you. You're going to walk through some valleys of tears. But the point is, we walk through the valleys of tears. We don't camp there. We don't give up there. And the confession, as they pass through the valley of Baca, they make it a place of springs. It's like, God, I've got to find you in this place. I've got to dig down. I've got to find a new source of life in this place. And once you get that mindset, remember the devil had an agenda to take Jesus out. God had an agenda to establish some things. Pastor Sam often says, if you're not seeing God do through you what you're looking for, or for you what you're looking for, it's because He's still doing something in you. Hate that, eh? Like, just fix the situation, God. It's like, no, I'm calling you to dig down and find something in here that's going to set you up for your next place. And so again, they go from strength to strength. It's like, yeah, in this valley, man, there were tears, but I had to dig down. I had to find something there of life. And that set me up to be strong enough to go into the next season. And then I had to find something new, and I dug down and found, and that set me up for my next season. And it's like, this is how God works. And it's all the foundation. Verse 5, blessed are those whose strength is in you. Oh, sorry, go back. Whose hearts are set on pilgrimage. Like, I've set my heart, I'm not going to stay here. I've set my heart that I'm going forward. I'm not going to allow my heart to get bitter and disappointed and give up in this space. Because God, if I haven't seen it yet, and I know what it's like, prophetic words and stuff, just to get kind of cynical, disappointed, hurt, and go, I've heard it all before and it hasn't happened. And to kind of find out, God, if you said it, this can't be the destination. I've got to find a new well of life in this space that will take me forward into my next season. Now, next one, the whole foundation of this is because, God, how lovely is your dwelling place. And it's like, God, that's where I'm going towards. It's the same as saying, if I'm not there yet, God, that's where I'm going. And so if I got to find you in a way that gives me the passion, the hunger, the drive to keep moving forward. Because that's where we're headed. Even verse 3, even the sparrows found a home. God, here's the deal. I may pass through valleys, but my home is in the presence of God. My home is in the favor of God. And if I'm not there yet, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. God just wants to reassure some people, just keep going. You're not there yet. This is not the destination. Just keep going. Next one. And the whole foundation, because blessed are those who dwell in your house. Yeah, there's a blessing when I dwell there, but there's also a blessing when I've set my heart on pilgrimage to keep going till I am there. So I'm blessed if I'm there, I'm blessed if I'm not on my way there. I'm going to be blessed, but it's a challenge to find the blessing of finding him in the difficult spaces. I got the next one. In the Bible, it talks a lot about wilderness and promised land. There's a season of wilderness, of testing, then there's a season of stepping in the promised land. Some writers in spirituality have kind of unpacked this a bit more in terms of the 4 seasons. That it's not just 2 things. The God of creation works in 4 seasons. And it's quite a great image. At the top, springtime, there's a season of new life and freshness and stuff just feels like potential is starting to spring up and stuff. It's just fun and exciting. And then summer, it's like, man, the full thing of produce and harvest and just relax. Often some hard work around the getting in the full harvest. But man, we were in Auckland last Sunday morning, and then we drove to Tauranga. It was a cold wind in Auckland, and then it was warm in Tauranga. You just feel everything relaxes in the warmth. You realize in the cold, you're just always bracing yourself for the hits, and that's like spiritually and psychologically. And summer, it's just, you just relax. And if there's any hard work, it's the sweat of bringing in a harvest, kind of. But what I'm saying is there's a whole spirituality for different seasons. And then in autumn, it's often around stuff that you've invested. It's releasing these seed pods into all kinds of other places. But there's almost a price, a cost for all of that life, and there's kind of that internal kind of, I don't know, dialing back, like, man, I produced a lot, but there's not the freshness anymore, and I'm starting to draw back a bit. It's a season. It can be a bit scary. And then winter, like, everything's stripped back to basics. Nothing, if you try anything new, nothing works. When we were in Christchurch, my wife was into gardening. She bought this house. We must have bought it in winter or something. Because I know she's into gardening. I'm like, what are you going to do with the garden? And she's like, we just have to wait till spring to see what springs up. Because it's not worth trying to do anything in winter. And it's like, welcome to the spirituality of winter. Anything you try, nothing works. You keep trying stuff and it dies. And it's like, and God's just stripped everything back to the bare basics. I was thinking about this when we said we were missionaries in the Philippines, and we were really committed to mission all our 20s, and then we felt God call us back to New Zealand, and it was a really confusing time for me. I thought, No, you've called us to mission. What are you doing? I remember being in Christchurch, and people would prophesy over me, you're going to travel around all these nations. Nations are going to open up. You're going to be living out of a suitcase. And I just weep because it's like, but nothing works, God. Everything's closed down. Anything I try, nothing works. See, the only thing, I went on a mission trip with Anthony to Indonesia once, but nothing else worked. Like, nothing worked. And then 6 years ago, one phone call from Sam Monk, when you come to equip us. Now, 2 weeks ago, my wife sits me down and like, we are not doing this again next year. You're traveling too much. And what happens in winter? Nothing works. In springtime, stuff's springing up everywhere. And my challenge, actually, I remembered when we're growing up, planting little veggie strips, and with the carrots, you have to go through and thin them out. Because it's like I can't bring everything to a harvest that's coming up in springtime. In winter, it's like nothing works. In springtime, it's like everything's springing up, and I have to start being selective. In summer, it's like, how do I produce the whole harvest? In autumn, it's like, how do I start releasing what I've invested in, but also dialing back what I'm doing? And in winter, it's like, how do I let God dig down deep roots? That's a setup for the next spring. And it's like, do you see what I mean? There's a whole spirituality. Flick out the next one. I like this kind of thought, that of the sweep through of seasons. And if you flick up the next one, I like this one because it's the sense of it's cyclical, however you say it. That I go, I need to make adjustments to the season that I'm in. Because you see, there's a whole way of connecting with God that's different in different seasons. And it's fun. I was just thinking, we've been in Auckland 6 years now, and it was a hard decision, particularly for my wife. Like, we had to sell our house in Christchurch. She loves gardening. We're just renting in Auckland, no gardens. She loved having a dog. We had to give the dog away, so no pets, no gardens. Just nothing. And the first 2 years in Auckland, her dad was dying of motor neuron disease, so it's trips back to New Plymouth to try and care for him. And then she had 3 or 4 jobs, nothing worked. Just even at the start of this year, like, this is not my life story of a sequence of jobs that don't work. And it's like nothing worked. And then suddenly in the last few months, everything's come together, and she's doing this voluntary role in the church of pastoral care, running the 50-plus community and the crisis pastoral care, and she's just flourishing. And it's like, how the heck did that work, that for 5.5 years, nothing that we tried worked, and suddenly the season changed, and she's flourishing? And God's a God of seasons. And that's why I tell a story about the missions trip for me. I want to encourage you. If you're stuck in the wilderness, it's not your final destination. I've seen God change the seasons in my life and my wife's life. I've seen God change the seasons. I've seen him do it. But do you know what? My experience of this, I reckon the hardest season to manage psychologically and spiritually is the shift from winter to spring. Because naturally it's easy. Naturally it's like, things just spring up. But spiritually, psychologically, it's hard because, do you know what? Because you learn to hunker down, batten down the hatches, not get your expectations up, because you know if you start to hope again, you're going to be disappointed. And to dare to dream again, to dare to believe again, because everything you've learned is don't try anything, don't get your hopes up, because it's not going to work. And to actually go, I'm actually in a season where it works. My biggest challenge now is, how do I manage all of the life that's happening? When you're in winter, that's impossible to believe. Remember the psalm? When God restores our fortunes, we were like those who dreamed. Am I dreaming? Because I never dared to dream that it could work again. And so I want to encourage some of you to dare to dream again that you could step into a new springtime, where your challenge is not how to make stuff happen. Your challenge is, oh my goodness, how do we try and nurture? Where are we going to invest? Because there's so much happening. I can't steward all that's happening. And it's like, God is a God who does that. Flick up the next one. There's a couple of images that I think are helpful around navigating this transition. And the first one, a famous one, Daniel 3. So, King Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon, these three young men are thrown into a fire. Again, God uses the fire incident to establish something. God is able to deliver us, but whether he delivers us or not, we're not going to worship any other God. You only make decisions like that in wilderness times. In fire, God establishes things in the wilderness. Anyone can praise God when it's all fine. It's the decisions you make in the wilderness times. I remember again when I was 21, I was just finishing a psychology degree in Auckland, and I wanted to carry on and do more. I was actually enrolled in more study, and then someone challenged me, move back to New Plymouth and be a youth worker, and I felt it was God's thing. It's kind of the fork in the road of my life, really. And I worked as a youth worker for 7 years. We got married, and then we were going to go and be missionaries in the Philippines. And remember we're going to have decided it'd be a good idea to have our first child before we left. So remember, just finishing up 7 years as a youth worker, we were going to go for a final holiday before our son was born, and then we moved to the Philippines with a little 12-week-old baby. And so, and I remember just the night before we're due to finish, looking and go, I haven't got any money to take my wife's about to have a baby, and then go and sacrifice everything to go and be a missionary and live in the slums, and I've worked for 7 years and I can't even afford to take her away for a holiday. I remember sitting in our lounge and just like, God, it's kind of so unfair, and then getting to this decision point. No, God, the last 7 years were worth it. And I literally walked out of the lounge, and by the front door, I don't know how, still don't know to this day how it got there. There's an envelope. I opened the envelope, and there's multiple hundreds of dollars in there, and I was able to take my wife on a holiday. But God, I could have found the envelope before my moment in the lounge. But God takes you to those moments where in the middle of the wilderness, I got to decide, God, I worship you. God, I'm for you. God, I'm giving my life to you. God establishes things in the wilderness that you'll set up for your springtime. And so this incident, God established something in the fire, but if you want to kind of think about this almost prophetically, Nebuchadnezzar approached the fire. It says, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High, come out. And I want to say, for some of you, the king comes, he comes to you and says, come out of the fire. It's time to come out of the fire. There's a season of fire, but you're not made to dwell in the fire. It's time to come out of the fire. Time to come out of, man, I know God's tenderness for some people here, like, it's time to come out of the fire. You've been in the fire, but it's time to come out. I was with you in the fire, but you're not made to dwell in. Come out of the fire now. And many of you would know this thing, down the last 3 nights. They saw the fire had not harmed their bodies, nor was the hair of their head singed. Their robes were not scorched, and there was no smell of fire on them. Here's the thing, we've all been through fire, but do you still carry the smell of the fire? I got burnt in there. Something, and people, wouldn't it be great that when you share testimonies, it's like, man, I never would have guessed you'd been through that. You'd never know. Yeah, because you don't carry the smell of the fire. Again, what's the truth that God established in the fire? I want to carry that into my future. But some stuff, some hurt, some offense, some disappointment, I don't want to carry that. I don't want to smell of fire the rest of my life. Oh, you don't understand those years I went through. You don't understand. Yeah, I love that people would never guess. Again, in my relationship with Christine, we've been through some difficult years with our marriage and stuff, but this year we're the people who run the Mind Your Marriage course in Auckland. Again, I got to pinch myself. Like 10 years ago, I would not have thought that. I would have thought, you must be joking. We're gonna be the people who run the marriage course? But you can go through fire and not smell of the fire. And you can have learned the lessons of the fire, but not smell of the fire. And this is the passage I want to land on, the next one. is, the story of Lazarus. It's the middle of the Gospel of John, the greatest miracle in John, where Jesus' friend has got sick and died. It's one thing to be in the fire and being burnt. It's another thing to go, something died in this last season. It's not just a bit singed. It's actually died. My hope died. My dream died. My faith died. My confidence died. It's not just a bit damaged. It's actually died. And again, Jesus came to the tomb. I love, Nebuchadnezzar approaches the fire. Jesus comes, and I feel like for some of you, Jesus comes to the place where you're in a tomb where something has died. And he says, take away the stone. And it's like, no, God, you don't want to do that. I've covered this thing up. There's too much hurt. There's too much disappointment in there. Don't do this. I love, down the sister, but Lord, Martha said, by this time there's a bad odor. Some of the translations are good. Flick out the next one, like the old King James. By this time he stinketh. It's like, don't go there on that topic. Something stinketh in there. It's not nice. It's ugly in there. It's ugly and toxic and it smells. You don't want to go there. Isn't that great? Jesus walks in that place. No, I want to touch that area. That stink. Another translation, flick up the next one, says that, there is a stench. Anyone got in an area like you keep covering it, pouring food, you just, because it kind of stinks a bit in there. Attitudes and hurt and pain. And the next one, the last one of that, the smell will be terrible. But I love it like Jesus, like, no, that's the area that I want to come to. Because I want to call you out into something new. And then, good timing, man. And next one, and then he goes, they took away the stone, Jesus prayed. Verse 43, when he had said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. And I want to say to some of you, in your places in your life that you're in a tomb, Jesus comes to you and you'll just hear this voice calling you out of that place. But God, you could have come earlier. You could have saved me all this pain. You could have, that's the whole, if you read the bigger story in context. It's like, Martha's like, if you'd come earlier, we wouldn't have been here. Yeah, he allows it, but now he's coming to you and he's saying, like the king says, come out of the fire. Jesus, this is even more radical. Walk out of your tomb. Walk out of that place where stuff died. Come on, there's a new season. Something died, but I'm calling you out of that season now. Come on, there's a fresh resurrection, life beating. That's the essence of springtime. There's life beating again. There's seeds of life springing up. Again, I unpack, the season. Some of us just want to go from winter to summer as if he waves his magic wand. No, spring is sun, there's life. Maybe it's not fully formed, but there's life, and it's dear to believe. It's Bill Johnson says, we ask for an oak tree, God gives us an acorn to steward. It's like, but I was still, no. Can you see the little shoots of green life again? I love that thought. There was no joy. Oh, there's joy. There's little seeds of joy back. That's springtime. Oh, there's life again. There's hope. There's a little sign. No, the season's shifted. And I'm headed towards my summer. I'm headed towards that. And the dead men came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen. And it just said, Jesus said, take off the grave clothes and let him go. And again, it's a beautiful image that, in their culture, they didn't do embalming stuff. So you wrap them in these spices, and it kind of covered the shame of the decay and the death. And it kind of covered things. And there's stuff that we put on that was appropriate in a season when something died. It protected you. It kind of got you through that season. Man, I just feel that thing. But it's not the right thing for the season of springtime. And it's like what used to cover your shame now carries the smell of death. And there's this tension between, on the inside there's resurrection, life beating, but there's still some cloths that smell of death. A certain attitude, a certain cynicism, a certain bitterness, a certain defensiveness, certain I won't risk again, I wouldn't really I think that's that tension. Do I dare to step out of my winter into my spring? Do I dare to go with the beating I feel on the inside again and allow the grave clothes to fall off? Do I dare to believe, man, there's an anointing for springtime? Do I dare to believe? And so I want to tell you, look you in the eyes and go, I've seen it in my own life. I've seen it in my wife's life. Of long years, decade of winter turn into a springtime. It's happened before, it can happen again. I wonder what the thing that still smells of death, still smells of the winter. He's called you out, but you got to choose to let the grave clothes fall off. So that people in the future would go, I never would have guessed, I never would have known what you've been through. Man, just let God's, just let God's heart touch some of you. Could I dare to believe I've walked through a wardrobe into a new Narnia? I've been called out of the fire. I've been called out of the tomb. It's my time for a new season. You know, I love, if you go back to, that last one again. Jesus said to his friends, take off the grave clothes. It's like that psalm. Sometimes we need other people to go, hey, that's not you anymore. That little edge, that little attitude, hey, no, that's from our last season. Sometimes we need some other people to help us. Can I invite you to stand for a minute? And so some of you, I just want you to, I don't know how you engage with God, if it's close your eyes, raise hand. Somehow let the springtime of God be on your life. That whole mindset of spirituality, the little joy of seeing green shoots, of seeing blossoms, of stuff working. Stuff kind of being a bit messy now because of the snow thawing and stuff, but there's life. There's warmth starting. It's a bit ambivalent. There's still some cold days, but then there's some warm days. You know, the tree's budding already. The blossoms are there. There's hope. There's a season of refreshing. And Jesus walks to you and says, come out of the fire. Jesus walks to you and says, come out of the tomb. But maybe you need some people to stand with you and help. It was interesting, Jesus got his friends to help take the grave clothes off. In a minute, we'd love some of us just to stand with you and pray and go, it's over. Man, I just feel so much the tenderness of the heart of God for this church, for the people here. I want to tell you it's a new season. And I just felt in the service kind of prophet, God's really strongly going in terms of a bit like it's over, it's over, it's over. It's over. The season's over. Wow, just let God's presence touch you. Like I said, it's really hard sometimes to do. If you know, like, man, God's just bringing us into a new season. Oh, Anthony, I felt God saying, oh, there's going to be a narrowing of focus in this new season. I don't know what, yeah. But it's not like seasons, it's like, no, it's just going to narrow focus. Hey, I want to say it's a new season. And if you just need a bit of help, some other people to stand with you, to believe that, to agree with you. As these guys lead us in a song, can I invite you to come out the front, some of the leaders? We'd love to pray with you and help you take the grave clothes off. Come on, we'd love to help you step into your season. Come on, let's worship God. If you'd like us to pray, come out the front, we'll pray with you.